In Creature Needs, each poet or writer was assigned to write about an American animal species whose population is threatened. Now, the hope here is that the work will help garner more public awareness and support. Two contributors to the book, Rena Priest and Jane Wong, join me. Welcome.
Thank you.
So nice to have both of you. Okay, the idea of using literature together with the science of animal conservation, that's a pretty unique angle for a book, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think it's kind of ingenious, really. Yeah. You know, it gives people a new lens or a new way of seeing. I myself, when I was invited to the project, I was excited to participate, but then I started thinking, well, gosh, what if the science paper that I get is totally just so opaque or so sciencey that I'm just can't even relate to anything in it. Luckily, that was not the case. I got the science paper. There was a lot of really hard, good science in it, but it was so fascinating.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about the specific, because that's what's fascinating to me is what you got. And Jane, what did it mean to you to be part of this project?
Yeah, it was such a moment of reckoning, I think, because I realized that, you know, I write about, you know, creatures all the time in my poetry and my essays, but to actually know, like, what these animals are going through at this current moment, and, you know, they weren't symbolic, these were real creatures, and it really kind of, I don't know, like, to read, you know, as Rena was saying, these scientific papers that really gave some hard science facts, but also, like, you know, also as poets, we give like a different language of humanity to them too. Yeah.
I like that, the idea that you're bringing the humanity. I mean, there is a lot of humanity obviously in the science, but it can seem dry. And so let's talk about the specifics, because you both said that the assignment arrived. You didn't get to pick which animal or which scientific paper. So Rena, you're a member of the Lummi Nation and we should say our state's 6th poet laureate. You were given a paper on the dispersal of whooping cranes. Tell us about your approach to that.
Yeah, so you know, reading it, there are these facts in there about how they do it. Like, people will dress up as whooping cranes to raise these baby whooping cranes, and then they'll fly them, you know, the babies will fly south behind an ultralight plane, and that's how they disperse them. There's human reared versus naturally reared. And I thought, oh, wow, that is so amazing and so kind of absurd. Like, if you were to read that in a work of fiction or something, it would seem just outrageous. But here's this beautiful science talking about how they disperse these cranes out into the wild, rewild them kind of, I guess, and you know, to have that science available to determine how much habitat they need is fascinating. And then another fun fact, how it reaches people. Someone who read my poem said that the 600 that exist where she is most familiar with are from 15 original cranes in Texas. And so, you know, to have this like reaching people on that human level is super beautiful.
And that idea that normally we wouldn't, most of us, I should say, wouldn't read the scientific paper, but they're going to read your work and suddenly discover these things about the whooping crane that they didn't know, which I guess is the reason for this project. Okay, so Jane, you're an author and a poet, and you were given a scientific paper on and I have to get this right, the declining Olympia oyster. Now, how did you approach that as a writer and a poet?
I mean, I think oftentimes when we think about you kind of like dwindling populations, we always think of these like particular animals that are like cute and like these animals like, you know, and it's like the Olympia oyster is not the most cuddly.
There's not a cuddly face to that, is there?
But at the same time, I mean, obviously, this oyster has so much importance to the entire kind of local kind of like estuaries, and, you know, thinking about kind of harvesting and just all these like scientific reasons as to why this population is dwindling to 1%. It was one of those moments where it's like, okay, how do I translate that into a space where we can feel for the oyster? And I just let myself kind of like be inspired by what we need to restore in the land, but also in our hearts. And so it kind of went immediately into kind of like loss for me and thinking about actually my father. So it kind of like led to such surprising leaps, I suppose. But that's what the oyster can do, I suppose, to you.
And when I read your work, and when you're right, there was so much humanity in that work, and then the loss, and now that you're saying that you were thinking of your father, that all makes sense. And at first I looked at that project and went, and then I'm thinking maybe this is that point. And I was struck by something I read in the foreword by Lucy Spellman. She said she talked about the health of the species, and she said the only way to change course is to rapidly increase the number of people engaged in wildlife conservation. The information is out there on the internet, in books, but it's meaningless without connection both to nature and to each other, which it really struck me. And I would ask you both, why is combining art and science so important then, as you've done this project?
Oh, it's super important. You know, to be able to communicate something on the human level, I think in order to make people care about it, is going to be so much more impactful. Yeah. And the science is important because, you know, we need to understand in a sound way what's happening in the world. And so the two working together, it's like unstoppable. Super exciting.
I just want to echo that. It's like the combination of these two different languages, you know, coming to better awareness, better, I don't know, just like understanding as to why these things are happening, but also that we're responsible for all this too.
I like that, and I like how you called it two different languages, the arts and the science. Thank you both. And just a reminder, Rena and Jane are holding an author event tonight, Monday, February 24th at 7 p.m. at Third Place Books in Seward Park.